It is one of the most iconic locations in The Lord of the Rings, bringing fans to tears in both the book and cinematically. But this great port of the elves would have a long history over thousands of years, playing a role in both partings and war. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the history of the Grey Havens. Like so much of the Middle Earth we see in the later Third Age, the Grey Havens rise from the ashes of the First Age. After the destruction of Beleriand, the area that was once well inland is now the coastline of Middle-earth. And lying in the middle of the new elven realm of Lindon is the Gulf of Lune. It is here that the elves, in the first year of the Second Age, would construct what would be their greatest port throughout the ages to come, the Grey Havens. While Gil-galad is the High King of the Noldor, Cirdan the Shipwright would be the Lord of the Havens. After the havens of Falas and Sirion of Beleriand, this would be Cirdan's third such lordship. While it is not explicitly stated, it's entirely possible, and perhaps even likely, that Elrond's brother Elros sails from the Grey Havens when he and the Edain go to discover the land of Numenor. Should this have been the case, it would be yet another emotional parting that happened on these great shores. Still, the Numenoreans would not remain confined to their island forever. In the year 600 of the Second Age, a captain of Numenor named Veantur lands at the Grey Havens, meeting Cirdan and Gil-galad. Aside from the elves, we are also told a dozen men of Eriador come to see what they believed was ones who had returned from death in the deeps of the sea. From here, the Numenoreans would begin many voyages to Middle-earth, but none would sail so many as Aldarion. Aldarion, whose full tale will be told in a future video, would first sail to the Grey Havens with Veantur himself, his maternal grandfather. Aldarion would make nearly a dozen journeys to Middle-earth, including some to the Grey Havens. In 882, he would return from such a journey bearing a letter from Gil-galad to the king of Numenor, warning of a new shadow rising in the east, a servant of Morgoth. Over 800 years later, Sauron, having earlier led the elves in the creation of the Rings of Power, would make war upon Eriador with great force. After destroying Eregion, he sets his sights upon Lindon. From 1693 to 1699, Sauron's forces overrun most of Eriador and besiege both Lindon and Rivendell. The elves hold the line at the River Lune, protecting most of their lands, including the Grey Havens. Finally, in 1700 of the Second Age, the Numenoreans come to their aid. Led by Ciryatur, this great force of Numenoreans helps the elves in driving Sauron back. The Dark Lord's army would suffer further losses at Sarn Ford, and what would later be known as the Brandywine River. As Sauron is driven back to the River Gwathlo, the army of men and elves would be joined by a second force, sent up the river by Ciryatur, and Sauron is forced to flee with only a small bodyguard back to Mordor. Covered in much detail elsewhere, Sauron would lead Numenor to destruction, and Cirdan himself would play a role in the Dark Lord's defeat at the hands of the Last Alliance. Gil-galad would fall in the battle, and Lindon's prominence would wane. While Rivendell would become the most notable location for the elves, Cirdan would rule the remnant of elves in Lindon, and most notably, the Grey Havens, from which the elves could sail the straight road into the west, to the lands of Valinor. Later, in the year 1000 of the Third Age, the Astari would sail east, sent from the Undying Lands to aid the peoples of Middle-earth. They land at the Grey Havens, and upon meeting Gandalf the Grey, Cirdan gives to him Narya, the Ring of Fire, one of the three which Sauron most sought. While initially Tolkien stated that all 5 wizards come to Middle-earth at this time, it's worth noting that in his later writings, he states the 2 blue wizards instead arrived around 1600 of the Second Age, the same time that Glorfindel is sent back to Middle-earth. Nearly 1,000 years later, the Grey Havens would again be an important location for men in war. During Arnor's wars with the Witch King, Gondor would send a great fleet to the Grey Havens in an effort to assist the remnant realm of Arthedain. It is said that this fleet was so great that their ships filled the Grey Havens, Forlond and Harlond, while Arthedain, and by extension Arnor, would cease to exist after this conflict. The Gondorian reinforcements were pivotal in Angmar's eventual defeat. The Grey Havens would next, and most famously, be remembered from the final days of the Third Age. After the destruction of the One Ring and the final defeat of the Dark Lord, Cirdan would prepare the White Ship to carry the bearers of the Three Rings. Gandalf, Galadriel, and Elrond would take this ship, along with Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, permitted to take the journey having been bearers of the One. This sailing, taking place on September 29, 3021, is the final day of the Third Age. The Grey Havens would remain kept by Cirdan well into the Fourth Age, and it is said that Samwise Gamgee would take the same path as his master in the year 61, at the age of 102. Yet Cirdan knew that eventually his time to finally see Valinor would come, and the Grey Havens would no longer be needed. At some unknown date, Celeborn would come to the Grey Havens and take the last ship. Together, Cirdan and Celeborn would sail to the Undying Lands, taking with them the last memories of the elder days of Middle-earth. And finally, Cirdan and Celeborn would experience what Frodo had all those years ago. And the ship went out into the high sea and passed on into the west, until at last, on a night of rain, Frodo smelled a sweet fragrance on the air and heard the sound of singing that came over the water. And then it seemed to him that as in his dream in the House of Bombadil, the gray rain curtain turned all to silver glass and was rolled back, and he beheld white shores, and beyond them a far green country under a swift sunrise. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, CCDC Red Team, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.